Are we ready? Is everybody ready? This microphone is soft. I got to remember that. Okay. The time being now 10:30 a.m. on June 28th, 2023. I'd like to call this meeting to order of Kane County's American Rescue Plan Committee. Clerk, please call the roll for attendance.
Kenyon,
Here.
Bates,
Bates here.
Gums,
Permission.
Leonard,
Leonard here.
Molina, Strathman,
Strathman here remotely.
Surges,
Clerk is present.
Tepe,
Deputy here.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez present, and I apologize. I may have broken protocol or newly formed protocol. We do have two members who are attending remotely, Ms. Gums and Ms. Strathman. They both have eligible reasons for attending remotely. If there are any objections to them being considered present and part of quorum, please make a motion for that objection at this time. Mr. Surges, do you motion to object?
No, Mike, I just want to make sure that,
I'll use the microphone, make sure it's.
Yeah. am I on? There we go.
Yeah,
I'm just making sure that because we stumbled again on this yesterday, my understanding is we call the roll. If we have 2/3 of what's supposed to be here available, that's quorum, and then quorum can approve those that are not here. For 2/3 is what I read from the state's attorney. So as long as we're doing that, we're legal schmiegel, have a great day.
I recall seeing an email, I believe that went out yesterday that implied that we first state who is attending remotely and then do a roll call.
Doherty.
What you expressed was my original understanding as well. Mr. Doherty, did you have a comment?
There's an email at 10:04 this morning from Savannah
Mhm.
explaining the exact procedure you're discussing.
Okay, I have not seen that email. So.
Just
I
letting
thought
you know.
Okay, yeah. Oh, it's updated. So I'm going off the old information. I'm not current as of 36 minutes ago. So my bad. Ms. Bates.
But we do have to have a quorum in the room.
We do, yes. Then we presently have a quorum in the room. So I believe we're good on that end. And since there are no actual objections to the remote attendance, we'll move on to approval of the minutes. If someone can please ask for unanimous consent to approve the minutes of May 24th, 2023.
Bates would request unanimous consent to accept minutes.
Any objection? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. Public comment. Is there anyone in person or online who wishes to deliver public comment at this time? Hearing and seeing none, we'll move on. Discussion items, program manager update. Not much for you this month. Suzanne, Ms. Fonstock is, she's, just getting into the office and the position and learning her way around. So she'll have some stuff for you next month. We're expecting her to answer all of our questions and solve all of our problems by the July meeting. So no, she's doing great. She's just getting used to everything. Not much to update because today is a pretty simple, straightforward day. We have some good resolutions on the agenda. So for other committee matters, I have nothing, Mr. Tepe.
Yeah, one of the key things that I would want to get as quickly as possible is exactly how much money falls into each kind of bucket, what's
Yeah.
available,
Yeah.
what's been totally expended, what's, still in. So anytime tomorrow would be fine.
And that has been a subject of much conversation, as Suzanne has jumped right in and has not been afraid to really start figuring out everything all at once and is doing a good job. So that is a big part of our conversations, how we're going to structure the information and report it to everyone. There is a massive spreadsheet we can send out. It's just a bit clunky and unruly. So if you want that, I'll send it out to you. But otherwise, next month, you'll start to see a different format for us reporting the information that we're all looking for to you in one easy to read place. So that is the goal and we're on it. Madam Chair, did you have something?
Thank you. And thank you so much. I'm looking forward to getting that report. And here's the question that I continue to have. So please, I'd like to see what money we actually have, what money is going to be expended, what money is going to be currently expended in the next 3 months, what the projected are for 6 months, and then what money has not been allocated because of Ernst and Young saying it's not supportive of the ARPA funds. So how much money then has been relieved from that fund so that we know how much money we have left to spend?
Mhm.
And that is, and I've been asking with all due respect for that report for several months now.
Mm.
And in order for us to do wise investments with our money, and we're losing money, we'd like to get that report as quickly as possible. And anything we can do to expedite that. I think you have board members here and certainly legal staff and Ernst and Young, and you have Suzanne now willing, able to help you out in any way we can get that done. But that's a critical report we have because we have the potential of earning quite a bit of money that can be used for the good of the county. And unless we know how we're going to invest that and when the money's going to be released, we're at the mercy because we don't really know. So I think it's a reasonable ask, but I know it's a heavy lift. But I think with good stewardship and planning, we should be able to get an idea of what money and when it's going to be allocated. So
That's absolutely
thank you.
what's in the works. And certain things that were being worked on before they ended up taking a back burner because we had some transitional things happening and
I understand
reporting.
that.
So yeah, next month, that's our target, is to have these kinds of informational pieces put together
Okay.
in one format. for
And,
you.
and then if I may, perhaps Mr. Leonard, and Mr. Berman can work with the treasurer and figuring out appropriate ways to invest that in both the short-term and long-term investments so that we maximize the interest rate.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the plan,
Okay, excellent.
to maximize.
Thank you.
Mr. Leonard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Chair's point, do we have any of this unallocated or reserve money earning interest right now?
That would be a question for the treasurer. As we have discussed, creating a cash flow projection for the life of this program.
So does the treasurer have funds from ARPA?
Yes, my understanding is they're invested. I don't know if completely invested or not. That would be a treasurer
Do you have
question.
any idea what amount was given to the treasurer to invest?
What amount? Well, they have access to the total fund. I believe we're somewhere in the ballpark of 70 million cash on hand, somewhere around there. Don't quote me on that, but yeah, that would be a question for Mr. Lawson.
Thank you.
Yeah, we had previously started that conversation with him, but then as it came about that Mr. Phillips was going to be resigning, some of our activities got shifted so that they could prepare for the transitional period. So that's one of those items. And now that we have the revenue recoupment and payroll reimbursement numbers finalized and getting approved, we can now factor that into those cash flow projections and get that all scheduled.
So that roughly 70 million, I'm not going to hold you to any numbers.
Yeah.
50 million of that is allocated approximately. And it could be dispersed in the next 30 days or the next year.
Right.
So it's just a matter of trying to figure out when those funds need to be
Right.
expended.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
So quarter by quarter, we can do our best estimate of how much cash on hand we'd have for investments
Perfect.
and create a schedule that way. So,
And
Madam
then,
Chair.
thank you. The Payroll Protection Fund, I know that there's been some grants or requests that are not going to be funded through ARP. And they could possibly be paid for the Payroll Protection Fund, but that again is the board's money. And it can't be assumed that that is going to be used for that because the board may have other intentions for those resources.
Of
that
course,
ex-
and
that
it's not
exclude
assumed.
those.
It's not assumed that those funds would be used for ARPA projects, but there will be a discussion next month about which projects cannot be funded through other means.
But that
And
means that
it-
money
does the board,
is
do we want to
available for
recommend
us.
that the board, use some of that money for those projects, or we don't fund those projects? We're going to have to make some of those decisions, but no, it's not assumed that payroll reimbursement money is under the purview of this committee, because it's not.
And I believe that would be finance.
It would be finance and the county
Finance would
board.
decide that
Mhm.
and then bring it to the full board for recommendation.
Yes.
All right, good.
Yes, this is an advisory board, just to be clear. This is an ad hoc committee that advises the county board on recommended actions. So we don't have any purview over other county monies, just this fund. All right, if there is nothing else, we'll move on to our resolutions. Okay, first resolution, I need a motion and a second for authorizing award amounts for veteran service organizations, grant program, and the execution of corresponding grant agreements.
Kenyon would move.
Mr. Kenyon moves.
20.
Surgeon second.
Surge second. So this is the culmination of our veteran service organization grant. The notice that went out closed yesterday. So we have some preliminary numbers that are attached. I believe they were sent out after the agenda went out because we had to wait until yesterday to get these numbers. So what you see here is pretty close, if not exactly what will be the final numbers. There is some last minute verification that our team is doing just to make sure that everyone got all of their expenses in. We think we've captured everything. It could go up by a few dollars, might not. But in any case, that is the list right there, totaling $669,857.64. And excuse me 1 second. Sorry, I pressed the wrong thing on my computer and the agenda disappeared.
Unpress it. Press
Um,
it again. I have a question.
Yeah, Ms. Bates.
As we've been talking about helping the veterans, I evidently mistakenly thought this was going to go to the Veterans Administration. Has this been determined to be the best vehicle?
Yes.
Through these organizations to help our veterans?
Yes, we began the conversation of this grant program with Jake Zimmerman in the Veterans Assistance Commission.
Okay.
Essentially fact finding to discover, what needs are out there for the veteran community,
Mhm.
and learning that really there is only so much that a grant like this type of grant money could cover,
Mhm.
because so much of the other activities are covered under VA and other sources of money that the VAC receives, such as from the county. So the best way we determined with Mr. Zimmerman's help was to just directly fund these veteran service organizations, AMVETS, American Legions, things like that, VFWs.
I'm sorry, I feel like I didn't do my homework, but I didn't know. I didn't do my homework. So will these be used? How are they going to use this? I see the numbers, Bill, my fingers at them. But how are they intended to be used then? As direct money to the veterans?
Reimbursement
fund?
is the model that we employ for all of our grants with American Rescue Plan money. So it's essentially for mortgage and utilities costs.
Well, that's.
Very
I
simple,
know.
similar to our community support grant program.
Right.
Not as many eligible expenses because we wanted to keep this one very simple. The veteran community and the 501c19 organizations were included in the interim final rule as eligible organizations after we had developed our community support grant program. So we were wrapping that up as the veterans were now allowed to receive money, and it was too late to go back to the drawing board essentially because we were on a train that was moving, right?
Mhm.
So we kept it in mind that we did want to provide some relief for the veteran community.
Okay,
And this was,
is fine then.
this
Thank
was
you.
the path of least resistance and the only path actually that Mr. Zimmerman identified. Madam Chair.
Just so we have allocated $650,000, which is fine, but it looks like
For
they
the- for
need,
the-
according to your
For the
spreadsheet, about
veterans,
another
not for the
20,000.
VFW.
Are you going to ask the board if they would like to extend that so that we can cover all of those costs?
Yeah, and I was just looking for the language. I thought we had included just an amendment to that original limit of 650. Some of these organizations, they just came in a little higher, and with it being not too significant of a variance, we assumed, it's a reasonable conversation to have to just bump the number up a few thousand so that we could just cover everything. Keep it very simple. And as I said, we designed it to be simple. So there will be one reimbursement from each of these entities. They submit all of their paperwork and they get one check. It's very simple. low impact on staff and, time that we spend. So,
So are you going to have to go through consensus to get this?
can you use the
resolution?
microphone? Sorry, it's,
Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me. Are we going to be going through a resolution to support this? Or is it just going to be a budget adjustment that's agreed upon here and then brought forward?
if I could ask Mr. Steve Ford, Assistant State's Attorney, to respond to that, please.
Thank you, Chair Sanchez. So one thing I would note is the county put out a notice of funding availability for this grant opportunity that closed on Monday. So, in order to meet the county board requirements for putting the agenda packet together and comply with OMA, the resolution in front of you contemplates only using the $650,000 amount. This was walked in today with the actual figures because we wanted to give every VSO the opportunity to apply. So my suggestion would be the committee considers passing the resolution that was included in the packet and then amending that language. Once these numbers are finalized at exec, including a budget adjustment to make sure that all the funding is allocated to cover everything.
Excellent. That'll be great.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, that was the next step, is creating an amendment at executive, but I apologize. I thought there was still language in here. I didn't look over that part carefully earlier. So
Yeah, I
in
think,
any case, we want to ask for that amendment.
given that, I think Chair Sanchez in the art program wanted to wait until the NOFA period was closed to give every VSO the chance to get the full figures they could reimburse. And then as those totals are verified, that number might change. And I think at exec, hopefully that we can have the full number and have precise language and precise budget adjustment, if that's what the board desires.
So that would be amended on the floor of exec.
That would be what my recommendation is that exec would have a version of the resolution with that language. They would amend it. They would amend the resolution that's posted in the packet on the floor to contain the budget adjustment, the additional SLURF allocation, and then make sure that all exhibits are included within the resolution. Yes.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you. Let's get this money out the door.
That's the idea. This is the last step, is just getting this finalized. Any other questions? We have Mr. Zimmerman here. If you have any specific questions for the VAC, I know we discussed this last month as well. And Jake, did you have anything you just wanted to say?
Happy to take any questions.
All right. Okay. Hearing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina, Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Surges, yes.
Tuppy,
Tepe, yes.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. Okay, next resolution approving invoices from Ernst & Young LLP for professional services related to the ARPA program rendered from March 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2023, and April 1st, 2023 to April 30th, 2023. Need a motion and a second.
Strathman moves.
Polina moves, Strathman seconds. Any questions on this? Is just a routine approval of invoices for our consultant. All right, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Surges, yes.
Tuppy,
Tepe, no.
Tuppy,
No.
no.
Mm.
Okay. And Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes.
Hey, Vern.
Okay, next resolution authorizing the use of state and local fiscal recovery funds to fund 211 phone systems for the Kane County Informational Technologies Department.
Molina moves.
Melina moves,
Leonard.
Gums will
seconds.
second.
Leonard seconds. There is a somewhat similar resolution that just was approved at finance today and is going to the county board. It's the same work, but just a bit of a different track for funding. This resolution will ask for funding for past 211 phone contracts that we've had. And then also future to the life of the program, totaling $300,000. Any questions on this? All right, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Surges abstain.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. Okay, the next one, authorizing the use of state and local fiscal recovery funds to fund the CaneCom microwave radio for mutual aid project. Need a
Guns will
motion?
move.
Guns
Strathman
moves.
seconds.
Strathman seconds. I called you Guns at first, Michelle.
You
Nickname.
you're on it.
Any questions on this project?
Mhm.
Okay, hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Surges, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes, and I apologize, Ms. Guthrie, I didn't mention that you are in the audience. You're sitting right where I can just barely see you. So there you go. But there were no questions, so we're good. All right, next one, authorizing use of state and local fiscal recovery funds to fund an eviction clerk and a juvenile abuse clerk for the Kane County Circuit Clerk's office. I need a motion and a second.
Bates moves.
Bates moves,
Molina,
Strathman.
seconds.
Molina seconds. Any questions on this? I know Ms. Barrero is here to answer anything and everything that we may desire to know. Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm in support of this. I just wanted to find out how many years, I forget how many years this is going to cover for these two new positions. Was it 3 years or?
Excuse me. Good morning, everyone. Actually, it was the original when we put in our request for ARPA funds when this was, when this committee was originated. So I believe it's for 3 years. I could be incorrect, but it might be up to 5. Goes to 2026, according to what the documentation that we submitted.
Effective when, in 2023 or 2021?
Effective 2023, but you also have to realize we already have clerks that we're going back and forth to fill these roles, because this was originally for the 2 new courtrooms, and we've, been double dutying several positions. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Any other questions on this resolution? Clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Surges, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. All right, the next one, authorizing the use of state and local fiscal recovery funds to fund the Kane County Stream Gauging Network for the Kane County Environmental and Water Resources Department. I need a
Moves.
motion, a second. Bates moves,
Strathman seconds.
Strathman seconds. Any questions on this? Is Ms. Wolnick in the audience? I don't,
Linky is here.
Oh,
If
Link-
you have any
yeah.
questions.
Rob's here. Any questions on this project? Mr. Leonard?
Just one thing in the resolution. In the reading of that, I think they have GAGING network, and it should be GAUGING network.
I was thinking the same thing as I was looking at the title.
Gagging.
Yeah, gagging. It's a new word. It's not gagging. No. Yeah, that's a Scrivener's error. I think we can have that corrected pretty easily. Any other questions or comments on this?
Mr. Chairman, Alan,
Miss Allen, go ahead.
my question is kind of a longevity one. This money will fund this program for how long? And then shouldn't we be considering as a county board that this is something we should include in our regular budget under the environmental department, because it's something that we need to keep doing? One of the things that has come out of all of this discussion is that there are some departments that do programs and they're never sure where the funding is going to come from, because we have not said to them, this is an important project. We think we should fund it in our regular budget every year. Please include it in your budget projections. I just wanted to run that past Rob if he would give me some expert advice on that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Miss Allen.
Yes, that's a great question.
Could you just say your name just? for
Sorry,
the
yeah,
recording?
Rob Linky with the King County Environmental Water Resource Department. Kane County has funded in joint cooperation with the USGS, the stream gauge and rain gauge network, which, as you see in the notes there, there's 5 stream gauges and 4 rain gauges. And we've worked with the USGS in partnership with them to fund that. I want to say for the better part of 15 or 16 years, at least going back to 2014. And I think we were doing that before then. Obviously, it's critical that those gauging networks are maintained. That data is kind of the foundational data that we use for any assessments as far as stormwater drainage, floodplain management, and things like that. Traditionally or historically, it's been funded through the riverboat, I believe, is where we've been able to obtain the funding for that. So, but it would be something that, again, that it's an annual expense and something that we would look to continue to do just because the data is so important to us moving forward.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
I'm going to speak off this particular resolution to go back to the clerk's office. I would counsel the clerk to start planning the same kind of thing for any staff that we are
If
supporting.
the microphone,
Oh,
it's just,
again, this
they're not
microphone,
strong.
I'm sorry, the mic is like right in front of me and it's not picking up. Is that better?
Yeah, that's much
Okay.
better.
If I could counsel the clerk to consider the same issue, that when we're funding personnel, that's a short-term funding stream, that they start allocating in their budget for long-term funding need if this is needed and it's continual requirement. So I think we funded it till 26 if it passes through. So maybe in 25's year budget, you can start programming some money to start relieving this. So you've got it budgeted. I think that's just wise for any of our staff who are looking forward to hiring additional people to help them out.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Unless it's a temporary assignment and we know it's temporary, it's finite.
Right. Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments on this resolution? Hearing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Sturgis, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. Okay, next one is resolution approving invoices from Ernst & Young LLP for professional services rendered in relation to the Federal Emergency Management Agency Public Assistance Program from March 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2023. I need a motion and a second.
Bates moves.
Kenyon would second.
Kenyon seconds. I should have put these together, the 2 invoice resolutions next to each other, but this is just for the FEMA work. There really isn't much more work to be done on FEMA. We're awaiting some answers to get our final number of how much reimbursement we'll get from that grant opportunity. And this is just the invoice reflecting the work done in that month. Any other questions?
Nope.
All right, clerk, please call the roll.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Gums,
You got to call it
Yes.
guns now?
Yeah, gums, yes,
Doesn't respond to gums.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, no.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. Okay, last resolution authorizing the use of state and local fiscal recovery funds to fund the heightened need for felony cases and deferred prosecution for the Kane County State's Attorney's Office. Need a motion and a second.
I'll move it. Kenyon will move
Oh, nobody else wanted to, apparently.
Molina
Gums
will
will
second.
it. I thought she was gonna jump in.
Want somebody else to have a chance.
Yeah, right.
You're the chair of judicial. You got to get in there. Okay. We have motion and a second. Any questions or comments on this project? We do have some state's attorney's representatives here. If you have any questions, hearing and seeing none, we will ask for a roll call.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Bates,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strothman,
Strathman, yes.
Surges,
Sturgis, yes.
Tepe,
Tepe, yes.
and Sanchez.
Sanchez, yes. All right, we have nothing for old business or Madam Chair, do you have something? Yes.
I believe Brian Pollock would like to speak
Oh, yeah,
to the
sure.
committee.
Oh.
Mr. Pollock.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brian Pollock from the Kane County Clerk's Office. Nobody booed me today. Interesting.
They prayed for you. Is that like an invitation or what?
They prayed for him yesterday. Thank you. At least my board member is here to boo me. Thank you for letting me to come this morning. Madam Chair had asked if make a brief presentation. Our office had put in several requests, one of which was for the poll books that we purchased last year and had gone back and forth and provide some documentation. And we had hoped that the reimbursement request was going to be made during last fiscal year, and it didn't. So we're still at that point. So I think the issue had been whether the use could be COVID mitigation, and we'd provide some documentation to demonstrate that the time that a voter is in line and is processed and is using the poll book is reduced by about half through the new poll books. So it'll help with obviously COVID mitigation, but also flu and colds and all those other things. So I sent a letter to Mr. Phillips to document that. And so I don't know if the committee had received it. We can follow up with you with anything else you need, but just wanted to answer any questions you have and see if we could need anything from us to move it along.
Thank you, Mr. Pollock. I don't know where the conversation was left off with the clerk's office on these projects. I do know that we initially thought it was going to go in one direction, and then it looks like, from what I last recall from Ernst & Young's assessment and the state's attorney looking at it, is that it could be funded, but through what is called lost revenue, government services. And that is a conversation that we'll be having in full next month to determine, out of all the projects that need to be funded out of that section only, how much money do we have? What projects do we want to fund? The other, not pool of money, but the other potential source of money for projects like that, that this falls under, is the payroll reimbursement, which goes after the board approves it. It goes into our COVID savings fund. So that it also is another potential source of funding. I know you guys had the poll books request as well as voting machines, or 2 ARPA requests. And I remember speaking to Jack that, that is a potential funding source, but it has to go through board approval. There has to be those kinds of conversations. So,
Oh, sure. We were told
Yeah.
that the poll books were under the COVID mitigation side. So we have the documentation to go that route. So
yeah, if it qualifies under one of the eligible expenditure categories, then I don't see why we wouldn't bring it to resolution. And that's what we're doing here with these projects. So I just personally don't know the status
Sure.
of those conversations and determining eligibility. So we'll make sure that we get to the bottom of that. Feel free to reach out anytime though with these kinds of questions, and we can get them answered quickly.
sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. Madam Chair.
And thank you. And the concern I've heard from the clerk's office, as well as some of our other offices, is that they expended money, and we know that this is reimbursable, but it impacted the annual budget that they're working under. So they're under deficit because they expected reimbursement for these outstanding costs, which they had assumed that they were going to be able to be reimbursed for in a timely manner. So they've had to cut services or cut in other areas to make sure that they have a balanced budget, which is required. So the longer that this is delayed, especially for expenditures that have already gone out the door and they've been used and they've been highly successful, the harder it is for our departments or our elected officials to maintain that balanced budget. Otherwise, they go under. So we have to, if this gets approved, theoretically approved, and we find that there is a need, it's important to expedite those.
See you.
Because it's impacting the work that our elected officials and departments are able to do.
That is well understood. Again, this was a project that, to my recollection, it was assumed early on that we would be able to provide an easy justification for a direct spend with ARPA dollars. And as time went on, as our team learned more about the rules and the constraints of the grant, at least the team determined that the poll books project wouldn't be eligible unless under that revenue recoupment, lost revenue section, government services. So again, if we told them to spend the money, that's one thing, but there was always the caveat that this may not be approved. So that is why we have to find some way to move the money around to get them, their budget whole. That's not a question. It's just the question is, can it actually be done with ARPA dollars? And if not, then through what other source? But yeah, these funds are never guaranteed or promised, especially early on in the conversations that we had where we were still developing our criteria for assessment. Mr. Leonard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pollack, what is the amount that you? had
Use the
requested?
microphone. These are
Oh.
quiet today, I think.
Mr. Pollack, what was the amount that you had requested on that?
500,000. It was 499 something. For the poll books.
For the poll books.
you.
That's not an insignificant number, but it's not a significant number considering we got $103 million in the good that it has done. I agree. Promises were offered because we asked for grant proposals from our departments and elected officials, potential funding. Assumptions were made early on. Discovery happened later on that may be questionable, but nonetheless, the money was expended in good faith. And I think if we can take a good look and seeing if we can get these reimbursed through ARPA dollars, and because we had assumed that it was a cost that could be reimbursed, a valuable cost to the workings of the county, I would support that we do everything we can legally, of course, to transfer that money over to the clerk.
That is the goal, 100%. But just because there is a lot of these other projects that will have to be funded through revenue recoupment or some other source, can maybe payroll reimbursement. This is just one of those that we're going to have to tackle all head on. So
If it's a lighter shade of gray, move it. If it's a dark shade, let's talk.
yeah,
And that 50 shades.
so
Chairman Sanchez?
Mr. Sturgis.
Yeah, just on this particular issue, I mean, we just approved in item B and item G, significant amount of money to Ernst and Young. And they're doing the review of this. I mean, I just don't want,
The microphone, sorry.
I don't want the image to be, or the optics to be that we have a consultant that tells us what we can do and we're pushing it in a direction saying, hey, we need to get this done. So, I mean, if there's a way for us to look at this in a different category that we can ask them to consider, I'm happy to do that. I know, I'm just making sure we're wordsmithing it properly. So, I mean, I guess that's the request that I'm looking for.
Yeah, so some projects, the ones that have been flagged for revenue recoupment use primarily, they have other expenditure categories that they could qualify for, maybe. And that's where we get into a conversation about risk. And so we have sort of two stopgaps when it comes to risk. We have Ernst & Young, who is an initial assessment body for us, helping us with compliance matters. But we have our state's attorney's office as well. So that's another source of information we have to determine what level of risk this project entails, if we're going to go for this expenditure category or that expenditure category. So with things like this, there were just certain pieces of information, again, to my recollection, I may not be up to date because I wasn't the program manager. I just try and keep in touch. Is that it was just a bit of a stretch. It brought us into some territory of risk to apply certain expenditure categories to this project. So that's why it was suggested revenue recoupment would be the source. We sort of have an internal policy discussion about how we address risk. If either Ernst & Young or the state's attorney flags something as moderate risk, medium level, it's a conversation we have. Do we want to bring this to the board and decide that we don't think we can qualify for this expenditure category, But if you want us to, we can try and just see what happens.
No, I got
That's
you.
the kind of conversations that
Totally
we
got
would
it.
be bringing to you rather than just saying this brings us into a moderate level of risk. Our state's attorney is in agreement with that. It's not just whatever the consultant says goes. Don't think that's the case. We really rely on our state's attorney's office. And so we don't even go in that direction because it's been a conversation this whole time of keeping low risk. We don't want the federal government coming back to us and saying we have to take back
Gotcha.
money. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of things that aren't said in these meetings about how we make decisions, and that is one of them about risk. So this project, again, I'll make sure Suzanne is going to take a look at this in more detail and see where we're at on it right now. If we're good to go, if we've got an expenditure category that is low risk, minimal risk, or no risk, it's going to be on a resolution next month. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what it's at. But if it's still in the category of risk that is uncomfortable for us, then we have to go for revenue recoupment usage or payroll reimbursement or some other source. So
I did have one other question, not for Mr. Pollock, but Eileen, were you here for? We're all PADS fans. We are all PADS fans.
all right.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We are Eileen McNamee, PADS of Elgin. And we, of course, as you all know, I gave you State of Affairs last month. At a critical stage of, 80 people on a waiting list at all times, 135% increase of children in shelter over last year, 50% increase of 55 and older in the shelter over last year. And we are currently looking at a bunch of projects that, of course, we would like to, get funded and go forward to help, this critical issue that we're dealing with in all of Kane County. And with Kane County having a 0.57 availability for housing rate in the entire county, it's very difficult to house someone once you have them in shelter. So we are looking to expand permanent supportive housing, a non-congregate shelter. Right now, that keeps our numbers lower because still with our COVID restrictions, you can only have so many people within that shelter space. And we don't even have enough space in shelter now for employees because we keep taking away every spot we have to put more people in shelter. So just another note of how critical the stage is across the board in Kane County for persons experiencing homelessness and specifically families, because that is a huge issue right now. So thank you so much. Any questions?
Save those for after the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
And if we can, I think Jarrett will attest for those on the north end. Outstanding reuse of the fireworks just a few weeks ago that were the leftovers from what we couldn't do on St. Patrick's Day. And we saved for a special event, and those were outstanding. Best
you.
ones yet.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Ms. Bates?
This is off topic, but I don't know where else to say it, which is if we, speaking of, reasons to, the new rules about meetings, we all know that if there were a terrible blizzard today, 20 inches of snow, 50-mile-an-hour winds, we would all have stayed home. Madam Chair or Madam Search, Mr. Chairman, would have called off the meeting. We'd all be Zooming. What about an air emergency? I am not sure, but I'm pretty sure that some of our colleagues who are not here today may be home because of breathing issues. No personal issues, nobody personal calling out, but we should probably all be home right now, is what I'm saying. And I don't know where else to say this, but I think we should be more responsive. We have to think about, we have to look outside, look out the window and maybe call off some of these meetings. That's all. I don't know who to say it to, so I'm saying it.
Yeah, I mean,
Here and now.
we're here. It's a little outside of jurisdiction of this committee, I think, because
It
it's
is.
not
But it's
addressed in our
today.
policy.
But it is today.
It is
So,
today. Yeah.
I
It's,
I would suggest that if you're going outside for any period of time that you do wear a mask. But again, we are restricted, even though it has been said by the National Weather Service, it has not been made a weather emergency or no,
Really?
there is no air quality emergency standard.
Ah, Oh, I'm glad I, sorry, I'm out of order.
Bring it to the next E and E committee, it sounds like. I think that's what we gotta
Maybe
do.
there should be.
All right. Yeah.
Uh,
Okay, hearing nothing else under old business, we have no need for executive session and I absent-mindedly stole his thunder yesterday, so I want to publicly apologize, but Mr. Kenyon, if you would.
Maybe we
please.
won't adjourn. I move we adjourn
Do your job.
and get out to breathing the air.
Yes. All those in favor, say
Aye.
aye.